Both teams kind of at a crucial point in their season. South Carolina trying to get over the 500 mark, and obviously Oklahoma with a tough schedule ahead trying to get themselves closer to, at the very least, bowl eligibility as well. I wanted to start off with the biggest story surrounding this team, that being the quarterback room. Of course, Jackson Arnold was thought to be the guy. They made the switch at the Tennessee game, and Michael Hawkins Jr. has been the quarterback in the week since, though his numbers aren't really all that much different than what Jackson Arnold had been doing prior to that. What is the latest on not only where this quarterback room sits right now, but what the future projections of the spot for this Oklahoma Sooners team is going to be?
Yeah, this is a really big weekend for that position because, like you said, they made the switch 4 games into the season. Jackson Arnold was turning the ball over too much. The offense was stagnant. You know, whether that was his fault or not is kind of, I think, up for debate. I think that this Oklahoma offense has a lot of issues other than just the quarterback position. And Michael Hawkins has come in and done an okay job. You know, they win the game at Auburn, and he played, you know, for a true freshman in that environment pretty well. Had a couple big plays, but the offense, again, didn't move the ball very well. And if not for a defensive pick six, they probably don't win that football game. So I think that this week, you saw what Michael Hawkins did last week against Texas, which was not a lot. I think this week is going to kind of determine on what Oklahoma wants to do the rest of the year at the quarterback position, because there's a lot of people here in Oklahoma that think that maybe they should go back to Jackson Arnold. Now, the problem with Jackson is he's turned the ball over a little bit. He hasn't been super accurate at times, but he has pushed the ball down the field. They've had a couple explosive plays with him in there. Obviously, he's a little bit more veteran than Michael Hawkins. The issue, guys, like you guys know, you keep flip-flopping the quarterback position, and you're going to end up losing maybe both of these guys to the transfer portal. And when you talk about potential staff changes at the end of the year, maybe on the offensive side of the football, you know, would these guys enter no matter what? So it's a very delicate situation. It's going to be Michael Hawkins on Saturday to start the game for Oklahoma. Brent Venables said this week that he wants there to be a bigger body of work for Michael moving forward to see if he can be the guy. But I think he's going to have a really short leash. If this offense is stagnant again in the first half like it was last week against Texas, I would not be surprised at all if they pull Michael Hawkins and put Jackson Arnold back into the game. I know he's been practicing really well. Obviously, his future at Oklahoma is kind of up for debate, but I do think that he wants to be at OU. He wants another shot at this thing. He has already played in 4 games, so the redshirt question is kind of up in the air as well. But it's certainly something to keep an eye on, because I think if Oklahoma goes out there and they're not moving the ball, at some point I think you have to give Jackson another look.
Hey, George, it's Wes. Appreciate you doing this, man. You were reading my mind. I was about to ask. It felt like the way Venables answered that question that we absolutely could see Arnold this week. That was just me outside looking in. So good to hear. You kind of had the same thought there. What can you tell us? Let's go to the injuries, man. I saw the graphic pop up during the Texas game. Like, hey, Oklahoma's missing, 5 receivers. Obviously, Deion Burks is one of the big names there, transferred in. What can you tell us about the latest on the guys you expect to be out this week, or the guys that could be out this week that truly are kind of impact guys for this team?
Yeah, they've been decimated at the receiver spot. Coming into the year, that was considered maybe their deepest position group on the team. And then all of a sudden you lose, a Jaden Gibson during fall camp, who was expected to be a breakout player this year. He blows his knee out. Jalil Farouk, the 4-year senior who's, has been really productive for them over his career, breaks his foot on the first possession of the game. Nick Anderson has a quad strain that's kind of held him out all season, came back in the Tennessee game, played 1 series and re-injured it, so no one knows if he'll still be out. Andrel Anthony tore his ACL last year against Texas and has had 3 different procedures since then to try and fix the knee, some different scopes and cleaning it out. No one knows when he'll be back. And then, of course, Deion Burks, like you mentioned, the Purdue transfer, who was expected to be their top receiver this year, was playing pretty well in the first few games. Then he gets hurt against Tennessee with a soft tissue injury and has been questionable now for the last 3 weeks. Didn't play against Auburn, didn't play against Texas. And this week, I think that it's one of those situations where he might try to give it a go. He was listed as questionable on the availability report. Brent Venables said earlier this week that he's really trying to play this week. that he's up to 80% max volume was the quote. I don't exactly know what max volume means, if that means speed or just overall health. I don't really know. He also said that he's trying to defy all odds to play on Saturday, so that makes me think that he's not going to be able to play. So we'll see. That would be a huge boost for them because right now they're playing, 3 true freshmen at wide receiver who just haven't, those are guys that I think are highly talented, but nobody expected them to play this year. Brennan Thompson, a transfer from Texas, but a really small guy, speedster. He's going to play a lot at receiver. J.J. Hester, a 6-year senior that really hasn't done much in his career, is playing a lot. And then they even moved a cornerback, Jacoby Johnson, who played wide receiver in high school, and was really productive at wide receiver in high school. He's moved over to the wide receiver room but hasn't made any impact. So that's another part of the issue with this Oklahoma offense. Everybody wants to blame the quarterback and the play caller, but I do think that sometimes it's as simple as they just don't have a ton of their playmakers available right now on offense.
Again, talking to George Stoia from SoonerScoop here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Let's take a look at the defense now, which, like South Carolina, is the strength of this team. We know they have talent. Wes and I were talking about it earlier. You got guys like Stutzman, R. Mason Thomas, Eli Bowen on the back end is turning some heads at cornerback. But schematically speaking, what are they going to throw at South Carolina this weekend that's going to give this Gamecock offense trouble?
Yeah, it's going to be a mix of things, and you guys know this, having seen South Carolina go up against Brent Venables and the Clemson defense for years. He's going to throw the kitchen sink at South Carolina. We've seen them come out in 4-man front, 3-man front, a bear front where they walk up the linebackers, and it looks like they've got 7 guys maybe coming after the quarterback, and then they drop guys that maybe you're not expecting to drop. They're going to have different stunts and blitzes and things that I'm sure that they're going to want to get after Sellers and also contain him, because his ability to run, that's something that Brent Venables' defenses have had struggles with in previous years. And so I think that, having to spy him, whether that's with a Danny Stutzman or, their cheetah position, which has kind of been a rotating door this year, it's going to be really interesting to see how they attack the South Carolina offense, because one area that Oklahoma has maybe been a little bit vulnerable is on the back end. They've given up some big plays, to Tennessee and Auburn in the passing game. Texas last week was able to run the football a little bit better, but also had some big chunk plays in the passing game. And so that back end, the corner position, they're playing true freshman Eli Bowen, who's been really, really good in the moments he's been in there, but he is a true freshman. He could make some mistakes. And so I'm interested to see if South Carolina tries to push the ball down the field, because teams have had success, throwing the football in Oklahoma at times. And so this defensive line, the front 7 for Oklahoma, is really the strength of the defense. They've been able to get after quarterbacks pretty well this year. They only had 1 sack last week against Texas. I think it came on the first play of the game, but they created a lot of havoc in that game. Texas was able to capitalize down the field, and Quinn Ewers played a pretty good football game. So I think you're going to see a lot of different blitzes trying to get after Sellers, force him into some bad mistakes. I know that South Carolina's turned the ball over a few times this year. I think they lead the country in turnovers. You guys can correct me on that. But I think that's where Oklahoma defensively, they know to win this football game, just like South Carolina defensively, they have to create some turnovers, help their offense, give them some short fields, and maybe even score a defensive touchdown if they want to win this football game.
Yeah, George, I mean, these two teams are like the two Spider-Man, like the meme, looking at each other in terms of strengths and weaknesses, I feel like. And, you look at the over-under on this thing, man, it's right at like 40.5, 41, 41.5, depending on where you look. That feels about right. You can certainly see why Vegas would set that number at that. I guess, what do you think is going to be, other than just maybe, hey, somebody has a pick six or a big sort of just strange play, what's the differentiator this week? And, are you thinking this thing has got to be low scoring as well in terms of just game flow?
Oh, definitely. I would take the under on this game for sure. I just don't see how Oklahoma is going to generate a ton of points. Maybe I'm wrong, and Michael Hawkins goes out there and lights it up, or maybe they switch over and Jackson Arnold comes back and looks like the 5-star that everybody expected him to be. But with Oklahoma's issues offensively, whether it's the offensive line, which has just been, a disaster really for Oklahoma in terms of a rotating door, having to play a lot of young guys, some injuries up there. going against that South Carolina front. I just don't see how Oklahoma is going to have a ton of success moving the ball up and down the field. And then on the other side, I think that Oklahoma can have a lot of success defensively. So I think this is going to come down to who can create more turnovers, who can create more chaotic plays. I know South Carolina has played in a lot of chaotic games this year, so you lean towards that. And I think it comes down to special teams, guys. I know that that's a specialty, obviously, with Beamer and Beamer ball and all that goes into that. Oklahoma has to play a really clean game on special teams, maybe have a big punt return or a kick return. Field goal kicking has been kind of shaky for Oklahoma this year. They started the year with Tyler Keltner as the field goal kicker. He's been okay, and then Zach Schmidt came in and kicked really well against Auburn. So I'm interested to see who's going to be kicking for Oklahoma in this game. But that, to me, turnovers and special teams, when you talk about a defensive game, that's where I see this game being won. If one of these sides can get a couple turnovers and maybe score on one of those turnovers, I think that will be the difference in this one.
Last one for you here. I got right at about 2 minutes. You mentioned Coach Beamer there. Of course, he was on Lincoln Riley's staff before getting hired as the head coach here at South Carolina. And everything that I've seen from the Oklahoma fan base, they seem to like Coach Beamer a lot. Can you speak to why Coach Beamer has such a positive reputation around Norman?
Well, I think one is he's just such a great guy. I'm sure you guys have gotten to get to know him, but even now, anytime I bump into Shane, whether it's at media days or down in Destin for, SEC meetings and things like that, he always stops and talks and asks, how I'm doing in my personal life and things like that. And I think that's number one with Shane. He's just a good dude. But number two, his position was very good at Oklahoma. He coached tight ends and fullbacks, and they had a lot of success under him. He also helped out a lot with special teams. They were some of the best special teams units Oklahoma's had in quite some time and really elevated that group when he was in Norman. So I think it's those two things. And, again, just his personability, I think that is something that really stood out. There was a lot of people in Norman that thought, if Lincoln were to leave at some point for the NFL down the line, if Shane was still on staff, that maybe they would promote a Shane Beamer. I know I personally thought that he had the chops to be a head coach someday. So there's a lot of people in Norman. I know Joe Castiglione, the athletic director, loves Shane Beamer. They were very active in the community here. So I think all of those things, it'll be definitely a welcoming back for Shane.
He is George Stoia from Sooner Scoop. We appreciate your insight and looking forward to the game on Saturday.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.